Welcome to Module 4. I hope your pillars, categories, and initial blog post idea planning went really well. It's not going to happen overnight. I encourage you to revisit it and build on it and continue to strategize about those key pieces of your blogging mix. But let's keep going. So we're talking about the process, and I can't say enough about how often and how unfortunate it is when we fall off at this stage of the game. If we don't determine and commit to a process for repeatedly getting our blog content strategized, written, edited, promoted, published, etc., out the door every month, essentially, then we're getting nowhere. And consistency is the number one factor for growth and return when it comes to blogging. We've got to produce regular, consistent posts for our audience and for the internet to find and start to, index and drive traffic to for us on our behalf. So with that, we've got to kind of think about how we want to develop a process. Is it going to be weekly for you? Is it going to be monthly? Do you want to map it out quarterly and just batch write like crazy? Or are you better kind of every other day or when you feel inspired? Inspired methodology can be a little bit tricky though, because God knows we don't always feel inspired. And if we wait for inspiration to strike, sometimes we don't ever put pen to paper. I constantly remind myself that I was a daily columnist for a major newspaper for several years, and I had a deadline every day at 5 o'clock. Every single weekday. And there was very few days that I woke up and felt super inspired to write creative, original, uniquely compelling content. I really didn't, but I didn't have a choice. And it became this habit that I didn't even question, because my editor would start yelling at about 10 to 7 when I was still like perfecting the crap out of my daily column. And he would yell, "It's a daily duty, not a weekly or a monthly." And I would just have to push it out all the time. And now I'm my own worst enemy of perfection and procrastination. So I really encourage you to not push this off. The reason that our membership program is called the Content Club is because it was designed for the biggest pain point of social school students, alumni, and clientele, and that is consistent content creation, where accountability and coaching and just collaboration and community support to get that content committed to and pushed out the door on a regular basis is, for one of the hardest things for us to do, all of us, myself included, and two, something that we can commit to and do together really well. That's not a sales pitch for the Content Club, by the way. That's my way of saying to you, you're not alone. It is not easy to get this done. However, it's important enough that we shouldn't be pushing it off. Creating content and generating eyeballs on it is the most important piece of your marketing and also revenue generating mix. And it doesn't happen unless you do it consistently for a long time. So there's my sales pitch. All right, so what are we talking about here in process? Process. Yes, the role of that tier one content that's so important and how we can use it in our weekly and monthly process to make it easier and just to make it happen. And then the secret to tight and bright, really compelling, content that works and that is readable and inspiring to find on a regular basis for your audience, mind mapping in advance. It eliminates the tangents, it keeps us on track, and it forces you to have an action item, a call to action within that post, so that it's not just like, well, I don't know what to do next with this content because I'm Joe Blow reader and I don't know what they're asking me for. So if we can weave in some CTAs, calls to action, then we're starting to meet our goals and drive people to other places within our organization or our marketing mix. And then, of course, how do we pull this all together into a calendar, both the process, so the planning and the scheduling and the editing and all of that, as well as just a calendar of published posts that make sense in the right order, in the right quarter, and then, of course, the tasks and checklists for getting it all done. No big deal. All right, so let's start out with what we like to consider our formula for seamless, no big deal, easy content creation. Again, it's that tier one top content that's got that rich, deep idea, one a week that you can spin or have all sorts of other things trickle down from in a way that is actually quite enjoyable and also successful. So supporting content falls underneath that. That can be snippets of tier one, and then likewise tier three, even smaller sound bites from tier two. in the form of generally social media posts. So let's say that you decide that your tier one content could be a video or a blog, or maybe even both. For me, what I really like to think about with my video is just a live. But not all of us have or want to, create shot and really highly edited video content every month, like something with a lot of kind of After Effects or editing or anything. And a live is a wonderful form of an unpolished video that you can check the box of having some video content, but it doesn't have to be quite so perfect. Your live audience knows that it is you showing up live. They don't expect it to be a work of art. So what I like to do is start with a live early in the week, and then I pull from that 20-minute live, and it could be a Q&A, it could be a testimonial, it could be a did you know or a demo, or again, one of those content categories that can really work so well. And then I pull it into Happy Scribe, which is my favorite transcription and video captioning tool. There's also rev.com and a few others. We go deep into those in our tools and technology lab, as well as our tool shop. Why is that bugging me now? Vox, I think, is another one. Anyways, so from there, I transcribe that video script into a blog post. Voila! I didn't even have to sit there and painstakingly write it like a perfectionist that would take 17 hours to do. Instead, I've got this transcript that I can then just quickly put eyeballs on. I export it from the video as a PDF, or sorry, as a Word doc or a Google sheet or doc, and then I can edit it right then and there into a legible blog post of 5 paragraphs. From there, I can also pull out 5 to 10 sound bites, one-liners that I can tweak a little bit. And oh my God, I've got my video, I've got my blog, and I've got 10 social posts to support that blog. And that makes up 80% of my content for the week. The remaining social posts, I'm either going to do live stories about other things, or I'm going to supplement it with other social posts that I've got in the hopper. Again, I collect quotes or one-liners all the time in my social content bank, which is a Trello board. And I've always got something to feed that beast. So whatever that looks like for you. Oh, and I forgot the e-newsletter there in the middle. Same thing. I've determined that our e-newsletter is on Sundays for various reasons, which I go deep into in our e-newsletter class. But basically, when is your content going to be well received? It's probably not on Tuesday morning when every other company in the world sends out their promotional e-newsletter and we all just delete or don't read. So what can you do that's unique and that hits people when maybe there isn't so much traffic in their inbox? And maybe mix up your e-newsletter so that it's got the same kind of content categories or variation as does your blog posts. But either way, it's a great tool, that tier 2 e-newsletter, for pointing people back towards a blog post or 2 or 4, depending on how often you send out your e-news. All right, so with that, we're starting to think about our content maybe mix with the tier 1s, 2s, 3s, and then the frequency is the next piece before you map out a weekly calendar of what gets published when. So you find your formula and then you commit to a process. And of course, that's easier said than done, but with a little bit of thought around, what you need to include in your workflow and how many people are a part of that, you can start to quickly map this out on a weekly basis. So some of your content stages, as we like to call them, or workflow, as many others do, might include, of course, brainstorming or strategizing, the drafting of that content, editing, image sourcing, whether that's through stock or through your own massive media files that you've carefully arranged into folders and content pillars to make it easy on yourself. Maybe they're all nicely added into Canva in albums so you can easily pull them in or export a photo that's a perfect match for that blog post. Approvals, either from your client if you're running an agency or a small shop, or you're working with an in-house team of marketers or salespeople or whoever it is. Scheduling, of course, with your tool of choice or multiple tools. With our Instagram, for example, we schedule everything in Planoly, which we love. And then our Facebook posts, we schedule right into Facebook Business Suite so we can pre-boost them. And then we also pre-boost the scheduled Instagram posts. But the rest of it, we use several different content tools, but everything from Hootsuite to Social Pilot is another one that I've liked, to Buffer, Meet Edgar. And then we've just been playing with one called Content Studio, which I really love because you can load up your content pillars into Content Studio, and then you can create a library of posts that fit within that pillar, and then decide when you want each of those pillars to put a post out. So on Monday morning, Facebook, it's going to be an educational how-to post. And then on Tuesday morning, Instagram, 7 a.m., an inspirational behind the scenes story. So really thinking about those, you may already have some tools in place, and we go deep into those in our tool classes, as I mentioned, but whatever is going to make your life easier from a scheduling standpoint is really important to determine. In the next module, we're going to talk about blog scheduling because, of course, that's what this course is. But the point here is just to think how your blog and the tier 2 and tier 3 content behind it fit into this whole workflow, because we're not just writing blog posts here and thinking about strategizing, editing, writing, and posting or publishing those. We're thinking about our entire content mix as one cohesive unit, however big or small that mix may be. So your workbook for this particular module, we're going to think about the individual post now. We've got our pillars and categories and some of those monthly sales and marketing themes mapped out. And now we're thinking about how to write the best possible post. And make no mistake, this takes practice. If you think about some of the things you've ever written, maybe it's in a journal, maybe it's published pieces, or maybe you've been a blogger in your past life or currently, and you look back on the things you wrote 3 years ago or 20 years ago, and you might be super embarrassed, or they could be abysmal. And they only get better with practice. This is absolutely like a craft that needs to be honed, and brevity and conciseness and kind of like the format or the beautiful shape of an article or a post is something that we learn over time. And I still have my editors in my newsroom drilling things into me in my head as very fresh memories about writing as tightly and concisely as possible, absolutely cutting out redundancies and unnecessary words wherever possible, and that less is more. And this is why I say tight and bright. If we can, do our job, we're writing things in the least amount of words possible while still getting our points across. And look no further than the front pages of tabloid newspapers that do this. If they're decent and they have good writers at the helm, they do it really well. Like in 2 words, they can sum up an entire issue at hand, or the feature story of the day in some kind of quip or 3 to 4 words. I love to pull out, again, my favorite magazines or spend time on my favorite blogs online and see how, especially if they're professional media organization blogs, to see how they're titling things and to see which ones catch your eye. If you see a whole wall of blog posts, is it, the how to, or did you knows, or is it secrets of, or the formula for? What is the title, the headline that's capturing you? And maybe do the same in print. Flip through a magazine or a newspaper and see which ones are popping out at you and which ones are way too overwhelming, both in format and subject matter. Okay, so once we have a bit of a outline of our posts, we're going to want to structure those posts and really think about the key elements of it. And then thinking about the deadlines and dates, of course, and the steps at hand. How do we get it done? And then we'll look at that nicer method. So let's just dive into those workbook pages specifically. You've all, I'm sure, heard of a mind map, and this is essentially a brainstorming tool to help us get our points on paper and then stick to them. And my friend Roger, I use him as my drill sergeant for my own content sometimes, and he drills this into me so deeply. Stop, don't go on another tangent, stick to that one point, make a new point, because I'm like, oh, but I could add, oh, no. Try to think of 3 to 5 key points for each of your core ideas or that specific blog topic. And don't get too far off of it. And if you do, start another blog post. Don't try to mash everything into one. Make it legible. You can always do a series, part one, two, three of a really deep, rich issue, or make it a video. And if your readers are going to stick with you for a 42 paragraph post, great. If you know them and you know that you can break it up and use imagery or call out quotes or subheaders or whatever it is that makes your blog legible when you publish that post, so it's not just all paragraph copy that blends into one, awesome. But if your audience is going to give you 2 minutes of their time, then you can't include 10 or 15 different points with a bunch of subpoints too. So no rabbit holes, try and stay away from tangents and get really clear on what the core ideas are that support the main topic. Remember, you're taking us on a journey, point A to point B. Go back to like English class 101. And what is the climax of that story? At the same time, think about journalism 101. Don't bury the lead. Put the best stuff off the top. It's a pyramid style of writing in journalism where the best stuff lives right up there. Why? Because otherwise we're not even going to make it past the first paragraph because you've lost me. I'm uninterested. So put that key stuff up front, the headline, the subheadline, opening paragraph, make it great, and then get to your point as quickly as you can. Figure out where you can include the calls to actions or next steps near the end. And again, what kind of value are you offering me? Did it leave me feeling entertained, inspired, engaged, or am I annoyed that I wasted my time? All right, next up, when you have that kind of mind map done, and you can print a bunch of those pages if you like that format, or have a notebook where you pen to paper scribble it out. I have this one right here, and its specific purpose is that it is my big white paper notebook. It's from Roger, and my favorite click pencil, and I draw them out for a reason. Then I come into my Trello cards and I map out the specific details of each post so that I have it in written form and I can start to actually type it out. From there, you've got a couple calendars here. So if you're thinking about the month at hand, and you can do this the month in advance, of course, but bottom line, you need some kind of calendar to show your published dates of those posts and what are they? What pillar do they fall into? What other kind of supporting events or milestones are happening or going on in that time frame? Do you have a launch right around there? Well, you better make sure that blog post in advance of that launch is like leading up to it, right? Of course. We just don't sometimes work backwards in the right ways to create the right kind of content at the right time to build towards our sales goals or our sales campaigns or whatever it is that we're trying to do in our business to make money. And then we end up pushing out all this promotional garbage the week that it's on sale. Or we miss the boat and we haven't led people down the garden path to say, you want it. Oh, I know you want it some more. And let me tell you a little more about it. And here's how it's going to solve all your problems. And then ta-da, it's on sale. Scarcity, urgency, buy now, right? So Sales 101 comes into our marketing and our blogging efforts immensely. The second calendar or checklist that you could potentially have is one that looks like this. And you're going to customize this for your own needs, but an example of a pretty standard one, finalizing your blog topics and publish dates for the month ahead, next month. So I'm thinking about March's content in the first week of February. And then I'm mind mapping the ideas for those posts, maybe in that first week as well. Week 2, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to craft it. I'm drafting the first bit of copy and I'm curating the imagery and the graphics or creating them as I need to. Week 3, editing, approvals, automating it or scheduling it into my blogging platform. And then week 4, I'm thinking about how I'm going to cross promote the heck out of it. Or if it's my social content to go with that blog post, how do I boost it or pre-boost it? How do I create ad campaigns to drive traffic to that blog post, etc.? So really thinking full circle. And again, working a month in advance is our method. And this is part of the NICER method, as I mentioned, and I call it the NICER method because it's an acronym. N, where we name that content at the start of the quarter. So that's the quarterly effort. You name your efforts, your pillars, your categories, the platforms you're focusing on, and the overarching ideas for the quarter ahead, the 90 days or 12 weeks of posts and revenue generating activities. Then each month we do the I, the C, the E, and the R, the ideas and kind of planning of the specific topics. The C is the crafting and the curating of the graphics and the imagery and the actual written copy. That's week 2. Week 1 is the I. Week 2 is the C. Week 3, edits and automation. So that's the E. And then week 4 is the R. That's reach. So reach and return, where we're again doing those promotional exercises, creating or updating our ad campaigns that are going to support this piece of content or our overall efforts of the month ahead. And then by the end of that month, February, March is ready to roll. It's ready to roll out. And then March 1st hits and we start working on April. So we're never becoming knee-jerk in our content efforts. And we're feeling really good about the fact that we've got our set amount of content scheduled, because we know that scheduled content makes it happen. And then we can step in here and there with live content, live stories, the odd live broadcast or on the fly tweet or whatever you need to do, because live content keeps it real. So you might have an 80-20 mix, a 50-50 mix, or maybe the best you can do is 100% scheduled. And then your live is going to be engagement, where you aren't setting and forgetting or posting and ghosting. You're stepping in because you know that you have a blog post going live on Monday, every Monday, and then you have Facebook and Instagram going live on Tuesday, and then you've got your e-newsletter going out Wednesday. So of course you're going to be engaging with your community at those times. That could be your version of live. Quick teaser here on what's coming up in the 5th module, tools. This is the blog planner. So it is something that we have developed over time. And again, it uses Trello, which is my favorite, most simple project management tool on the internet. There's so many, and they can cost a lot. And worse than the cost is sometimes just the overcomplication. If you're not in a huge team, and some of us are, and we need Asana or Monday.com or Basecamp or some of the bigger, really kind of multi or enterprise level project management tools and planning calendars. But in this case, Trello is basically sticky notes. It's boards and columns of notes that you can move around. And what we use as notes are content planning cards. So I'll talk about the blog planner in the next module, but I wanted to bring it out because, for a lot of the workbook exercises, you're still kind of pen to paper, and we have to, some of you might be wondering, well, when do I bring this into a digital format, or how do I possibly turn this into a blog? And this is my method to do it. So I do map things out on paper, but as soon as I can, or as often as I can, I'm dumping ideas onto the blog planner in Trello so that they're always there ready to go for me. And then I write the copy right in that little card that you see open there, called the blog post template card. I will see you in the 5th and final module, and we're going to keep going. Thanks.